So every day at work, I've developed this daily mantra of I just want to get until the end of the day. And I feel like that's a really common daily mantra. Like, I'm sure a bunch of other people are telling them that to themselves. But it didn't hit me until a couple of seconds ago how, like, genuinely and truly miserable that comes across. Like, why is it that you are waking up every single day to go do this thing that honestly takes up the majority of your waking hours, at least for the five like working days if you work like a traditional 9 to 5. Like, it takes like 40, 45-ish hours of your week. It's a pretty massive chunk of your time. Like, I guess if if you don't sleep, like, you might have some other time where you're free, but like for the most part, like, you are at this job. And if every day you're telling yourself, I can't wait until this day is over, like, something needs to change, right? Lately I've been like experienced a lot of like physical manifestations of me being misaligned for my job. I don't want to say that I hate it because I feel like that's a little too harsh for the situation that I'm in. To be honest, I feel like my job currently is serving the purpose that it's meant to service. Like, it is providing me income to be able to take care of my basic needs. It's giving me some like social interaction, and I guess in some sense it's like giving me responsibility or purpose. So it's good. Like, I really shouldn't complain. I think my main issue is that every other aspect of my life, I'm so like fixated on changing my job and changing what I am doing, and ultimately like reshifting the overall structure and framework of my life, that I'm like, I can't really enjoy what I'm doing off work. I still really can't enjoy what I'm doing at work because it's misaligned. It's misaligned from what I feel like is my true purpose and calling, which you don't know me. So I would say that I feel like my true purpose and calling is to be a creative individual. I feel like since I was a little kid, I understood that about myself. Like, my primary mode of creativity is music. I'm a singer, a songwriter, a producer, but I don't really do much with it. I look through my hard drive of music for like the past like 5 years, and it's full, stacked. But a lot of it is like unfinished product projects. A lot of it is are ideas that I really haven't taken to the next step. And part of that is just because I'm a very anxious person, and like the idea of like collaborating with other people really freaks me out, and I feel like that's like an essential step in order for me to like really move up the creative rung. But I'm also just like insecure, to be honest. Like, I'm super insecure, so when it comes to sharing my music, even the things that I think might be good, I'm just too in my head about it. Um, but it needs to shift because, again, physical manifestations of this misery are appearing in my life. Like, I'm feeling jittery and anxious, and things that I know are not big deals are becoming huge mountains that I need to climb. And things that are setting me off, things that wouldn't have set me off prior, are setting me off like nothing. Like, I feel like I am constantly losing it. And so I'm trying to embrace some of my own advice because I was talking to a friend earlier and he kind of read me a little bit, kind of threw some of the advice I'd given him in the past and threw it back in my face. And I didn't love it in the moment, but in hindsight, I needed that. I needed that wake up call. So I'm trying to make tiny, small changes to reshift, reroute this route that we're going on. So this kind of started last week, and it started with me going to the library, which is frankly a pretty uncharacteristic thing for me. Like, I haven't read significantly since I like was in like high school or middle school. Like, even in college, like I read for assignments and that was it. Like, I definitely wasn't reading for pleasure. um and like, if there was a faster non-literacy based way of being able to get this information, like, I was probably going to go that route. But I went to the library, and honestly it was like a very eye-opening experience. First of all, the libraries here in Philadelphia, really great. Love them. Well, the library. I've only been to one. But the library I went to, great. Loved it. Got some really cool books that I feel like are going to be really fun to read over the holidays and things like that. I mean, the topics aren't necessarily fun, but I think they're fun for me and intellectually stimulating. And so I'm basically saying all of this to say is I'm going back and I'm making small changes and trying to both introduce new things into my life, but also like give myself like little accomplishments. Like I had been wanting to go to the library for months. I needed to get my library card because I just moved to the city, so I was just like, I need to do this thing. Like it's a useful thing to have. It's a productive thing to do. But I kept putting it off. And so I finally did it. And I feel like since doing that, I have made several additional steps. Like today, I started reading The Artist's Way, which is a book that, if you're unfamiliar, is a book that basically is like this creative spiritual guide. It's almost like a course basically on creativity, on how to tap into your creativity and get rid of the roadblocks to your creativity. So I started reading that, and that's been a thing I've wanted to read for like maybe the last 2 years, but I kept putting it off. I kept making excuses or saying, oh, I'm gonna do it next week or yada yada, but I wasn't doing it. So I started reading that, and even this is a small change that a week ago, like, I would have said that I wanted to do, but I definitely wasn't doing. Um, and so the reason I'm saying all of this is big changes in our lives can seem really overwhelming, and I know this from firsthand experience. Like, sometimes it just seems genuinely impossible. But by making small shifts, by making small changes, by making small actions towards the goal that you're trying to achieve, like, it's this inevitable snowball effect. I remember last year, I was like, again, losing my mind, but I think for a completely different reason. I felt like I was misaligned with my environment, and so I really needed to change that. And I had been saying for years that I was going to move out and move out on my own, but I just like kept making excuses. And one of the excuses really was waiting for other people to like move out with me, and like for like roommates and things like that. And I was like, it got to a point where I needed to just act. And I had gotten laid off from my job. And so I was given severance, so I had a few months to just kind of like figure things out and chart a new direction. And for the longest time, I was, just like creating different like methods of procrastination from like, achieving the goal of eventually moving out. What I started to do in order to be able to achieve that goal was just putting out feelers. So I would go on like Facebook Marketplace or like Zillow or different places like that and just like put out feelers or put out interest for apartments and things like that. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a job lined up, and I didn't know anybody in any of these cities that I was looking at apartments at, but I was like, I'm gonna move, and so I need to start looking for apartments. And I was throwing out feelers in a bunch of different cities, and I heard back from this one apartment in Philly, and I was like dead set. I was like, oh, the neighborhood is perfect, the price is fine, and it was like a sublet, so I was like, oh my god, I want this so bad. And so I like became fixated on that apartment, was doing everything to get that apartment. It fell through. And also I lost a ton of money in that process, and I like try not to think about it, but I'm still pissed about it to this day. But it fell through, and I think me a few months prior would have just given up and been like, all right, this is my sign that this is not meant for me. But I persisted. I kept going. I found this other apartment, and honestly, like, the dealings with it felt even more sketchy than the first apartment, but I trusted my gut, and I was kind of a little delusional in the moment, but I just went for it. Talked to the person who was living at the apartment, started subletting, and it worked out great. Very grateful. And I came here to Philly. Again, didn't know anybody, didn't have any job lined up, nothing. I told myself I'm going to spend 3 months here and just figure it out. And either I decide to stay here or I decide to move to another city and figure it out there. Um, but I feel like I came here and I really started to discover myself and figure out a lot of things that had been hidden or I had just been suppressing, and it was a really like beautiful and transformational experience. And honestly, like I feel like I'm a completely different person than I was like even 6 or 9 months ago. Like I'm just so different. Like there is, even though I'm like experience a lot of stress and anxiety right now, I also think there's just this overall sense of lightness that came from making that really big shift. But that big shift didn't happen, out of nowhere. It came because I was making tiny little changes and tiny little actions to get there. And I'm saying this honestly to remind myself that I am capable of making big changes in my life. I've done them recently and I can do them again. And so I know that the next big change that I need to make is in regards to my career. I am not a 9 to 5 person. And maybe a lot of people aren't 9 to 5 people, or maybe it's just like the circumstances of what 9 to 5 jobs are now, and that's why they suck so much. But I know for a fact I am not a 9 to 5 person. I don't do well having all of my time being dictated by another person or another entity. I want control. I need control. I think my biggest hesitation with that has been risk and feeling like, well, I don't have that same same certainty that I would have with a 9 to 5. And also it just like socially is like a little harder to explain sometimes when you're doing things on your own. But once these physical manifestations pop up, it's like, do you really have a choice anymore? Like you kind of just need to act. So, if you are like me and you are a thick-skulled, overthinking knucklehead, I just want to give this little piece of advice. Start with small changes, small moves. Like, it really doesn't need to be all that serious. Another example of me making big changes is like in regards to my fitness. And I used to be like a completely different person, very much super unhealthy, horrible eating habits, didn't work out, didn't do anything. And the way that I shifted was I started doing micro workouts, which were like 5-minute workouts that I would just do every single day. And at first I was like kind of down on myself because I was like, I really should be capable of more, but I just like stayed consistent with these 5-minute workouts. And when I tell you that I was a completely different person after like a month, it was dramatic. And after a while, like I could do more and I could do more, and then like working out or being active wasn't something that I felt like was punishing myself. It just was something that I wanted to do because I had just created this small habit in my life. And I knew that at any point, like even if I couldn't handle something bigger, I could always peter back to something smaller and be like, just keep it small, keep it simple. So if you're like me, you're a chronic overthinker, you are, recognizing that you need to make a big change, but you are afraid to do it. Start small. And honestly, start small, even if it's unrelated to the thing that you're exactly trying to do. Just like make a change. I just think any action is going to contribute to the snowballing effect. Like, does going to the library really have anything to do with like building a creative career? Like maybe, maybe not, but like it was a small change that gave me that dopamine rush and propelled me to do something else. So again, small changes. Does not have to be crazy. Just anything to add to your sense of accomplishment and to build this catalog of things that demonstrate to yourself that you are capable of doing more than you were the day before. I promise you, at first, you're probably going to feel silly. You're probably going to feel stupid. But give it time, and it's all going to make sense. And you feel really good. And then, a few months down the line, a few years down the line, you're going to be a completely different person. You're going to be like, who is this? How did that happen? I don't know. But it did. And when that happens, thank me. You're welcome.